think that's probably enough time to let everybody join in. So again, thanks everybody for joining. It's our presentation on Sage Intacct with specific emphasis on the core financials of the software. Just before we kick off, just to go through a little bit of housekeeping rules. So we will be recording this webinar. For those who can't actually attend, we can send it on afterwards. We have, by default, the cameras are off and everybody will be on mute. But if you do have any questions, or if you need any assistance, you can just raise your hand there or pop a chat in the chat panel. On the chat panel also, we will have a Q&A at the end. So again, just in case there is anything we haven't covered, you will have the opportunity at the end to raise that in the Q&A session itself. So a little bit about ourselves. My name is Ivan Darmody. I look after the new business here in Envisage. I have been, before Envisage, I worked in Sage Ireland for about 16 years. So I've worked with pretty much every product that Sage has on offer in its portfolio. So I like to think that I have a good understanding as to what product best fits what company and the requirements. So that's really what we're here trying to give you guys a steer with as well. I'm joined here by Kyle Moore. So I'll let Kyle just do a little bit of brief introduction to himself.
Yeah, so as Ivan said, I'm Kyle. I'm a senior consultant and part of the implementation team at Envisage Cloud. I've been working with the Sage products for over 25 years now, working with all different types of companies, organizations, local national charities, service companies, product-based companies, project-driven companies to identify, implement and upgrade, really change their accounting systems and look at the practices to best suit the customer needs. So that's who I am. I will be doing the demo later on, so you'll be hearing a lot more from me later. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. So I suppose just to give a little bit of a brief breakdown as to what we're going to cover today. So we're going to give you, at the start, a little bit about ourselves as a company, who we are, and follow up with a little bit about Intacct. I'm conscious some people might be familiar with Sage Intacct, some not so much. So just give a kind of a brief overview before Kyle goes into the weeds on it. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end as well. So again, if you do have any questions, we have the chat function there. So pop any questions you have, and we'll get to them towards the end. So just a little bit about ourselves and who we are. We are part of the Knowledge Group, which is a wider technology group. And we have offices in Belfast, Newcastle, and our head office is here in Dublin and Castleknock. And that is Newcastle, England, not Newcastle, County Dublin, as a lot of people have thought in the past. We are an award-winning Sage partner over the years. We've won many, many awards from Sage, including obviously Partner of the Year, Best Partner in Ireland and the UK. And one thing about Envisage is we're quite unique in so much that we're specialists in Sage ERP. That's all we do. We don't diversify. We focus in on both Sage 200 and Sage Intacct. Obviously, this morning we're going to be focusing on Sage Intacct. But again, this is our bread and butter. It's what we do best. And the vast majority of our staff are not only ex-Sage employees, but have at least a decade experience working with Sage products as well. So we're good at what we do, essentially. So just a little bit about Sage Intacct for those who might not be familiar. While it is relatively new to the Sage portfolio from the ERP space, it's the latest, I suppose, the newest kid on the block in the ERP space. But ultimately, I think Sage had identified there was a gap in their portfolio for a completely cloud-native ERP solution. So Sage do what Sage do best. They went on the acquisition trail and they went out to market to see what was the best practice out there at the time. So they identified Sage Intacct out of America. So the software itself, while new to Sage, by no means is new kid on the block. It has been around since 1999. One fact I always find interesting about Sage Intacct is the fact that the very first line of code was written in the cloud. So it's quite unique in so much that a lot of cloud products in this day and age and other products that you might be familiar with started out life as an on-premise solution, but then actually ended up being ported into the cloud and given cloud connectivity or cloud accessibility. But back in 1999, considerable foresight, the first line of code was written, so it is completely cloud native and born in the cloud. So in the States, over that period of time, it grew and grew and grew. It had a lot of kind of insight as well as to where it wanted to be in the marketplace. I think demonstrated by that, back in 2005, they developed a cloud native integration with the likes of Salesforce. So again, not a lot of companies, particularly this side of the world, were kind of looking in that direction. But they knew that this was a space not only from the cloud side of things, but also the importance of integrating with other applications as well. So up until 2017, then Sage actually made the acquisition. brought it across. Again, Sage being the largest technology company in the UK, still, if I'm not mistaken, the only FTSE or the only software company in the FTSE 100. So well established to bring this product across and make it available to both the Irish and UK markets, and then further afield as well. So it was brought across to the UK and Ireland. We adopted it. We were the first partner in Ireland to adopt it back in 2023. And we've been going from strength to strength since then. So again, this is really, again, give you an idea as to what you can expect from it. The idea behind Intacct, it's designed for people who are looking to drive efficiencies, to improve processes that are in your company already. The benefit, I think, one of the unique benefits that Intacct offers is using the likes of AI, machine learning, and automation to carry out a lot of processes that are normally done within businesses that take up a lot of resource, a lot of time, and can ultimately be prone to error ultimately. So it's just a really way of kind of improving the processes, maximizing on your productivity in order to improve your profitability as well. So is what you'll see in the next slide also is the fact that it is a modular system. It gives the ability for companies to actually grow with the software, or the software grow with the company, by actually adding on modules as is needed. So it's not a case of a one-stop shop, one size fits all. You can actually pick and choose what's specific to yourself, or even if you are in a particular vertical, there are wraparounds that can actually suit you on that as well. So again, as you can see, they have specific industry specific wraparounds for the likes of nonprofits, for hospitality, financial services, SaaS companies. But then again, you still have these additional modules that you can like fixed assets, like inventory, contract billing, et cetera, et cetera. So it just means that you can kind of customize the software to specifically to your own needs. And that just gives it a little more of an edge, so that you're kind of focusing on what's important to your business. One thing that people will often ask as well, particularly when moving to the cloud, if you're not already familiar with it, there can be an element of hesitance. There might be, an element of unsurety just as to, what is the cloud about? Is it safe? Is it right for me? Do I want to move away from my server in the corner? The vast majority of the time, and I don't want to say all the time, the cloud is a lot more, well, it is infinitely more secure than having systems installed on your own network. So you do have that ability to have redundancy. So the software itself is backed up. Not only is it backed up into the cloud, it's actually backed up then to a second site. So it just means that you have that commitment from Sage that you have 99.8% uptime. So a lot of the time when people are moving to the likes of Intacct, they're moving away from legacy systems where they just find that they're continually crashing. They have downtime, systems will be down for a couple of days, they can lose data. And you just, it's not a situation, that you can afford to be in. So having that reliability, having that commitment from the likes of Sage to look after that. On top of that, you also have the added benefit that you don't actually have to look after the systems themselves in terms of network infrastructure, servers, licensing. That's all part and parcel of your hosting fee. Not only do you have the peace of mind that the software is going to be kept up to date from a regulatory point of view, it's also maintained from an IT and an infrastructure point of view. And you also then have the ability that if you were to grow, you can actually increase the capacity as well. So it's never a case you're going to run out of space per se. The software will grow with you. And that's the idea behind it. It's all about scalability. So as much as I can talk about it till the cows come home, it's probably better to hand over to Kyle, and he can actually show you the software in operation. Kyle?
Okay, thanks, Ivan. I'm just sharing my screen now. Hopefully everyone can see that screen. Let me just check. Sorry, I'll stop showing that. Sure. And there we go. Okay. So this is the Sage Intacct screen. I've just landed on a dashboard here. So today I'm going to transfer you the many benefits your company can get by implementing the Sage Intacct in the system. So we're going to be looking at a few key points. We're going to be looking at our real-time insight for smarter decision making. So that's through things like dashboards, which you can see here, key performance indicators, which I'll explain a wee bit later. We'll be looking at multi-entity management and dimensions. That's how we share records, roll up, consolidate company information across different entities or companies. Looking at reporting, so getting up to date, accurate reporting, key insights for users, companies, tasks, invoices, things like that. Looking at a bit of improving sort of our automation processes, things like approval routes, OCR invoice recognition, recurring invoices, and then looking at how other things can help us in the system, such as bank reconciliation, bank feeds, matching transactions automatically, creating transactions automatically from your link to the bank, looking at some budgets and spend management, and looking at some additional features, standout features for our system. So what we're going to do here is we're going to jump straight in, and I'm looking at a financial controller dashboard. So one of the first signs you're outgrowing your company really is probably inadequate visibility of your data, so that you can't make quick decision makings on data-driven information. So one of the best ways that Sage Intacct addresses this is by giving you the information here on dashboards that relate to the role that you're playing. So in this case, I've logged on as a financial controller dashboard, but as you can see, there's a CFO, there's an AR manager, project manager, purchasing, etc. And each of the dashboards relate to a different role, and they will give different information, pulling from many different aspects of the Intacct system. So you can see it's a web-based system, so it's on a web page here. And along the top, we can see in the financial controller has got these things called performance cards. So what a performance card does is gives you headline information. So we're looking at customer balances here. We're looking at total revenue, expenses. We're looking at things like cash on hand. And you'll notice if I just scroll over that it changes color. So first thing is that a lot of the information that we get on the screen here, we can actually click into, drill into the detail of that, and back to our bank account, down into your transactions in our bank account, and even right down to the transaction itself, including all the lines that were part of that journal. Okay, so first thing is performance cards. Great to see headline information. We can have them with greens or reds, depending on flags that you want to have to identify different issues. One of the nice things about this is the performance cards cannot just be based on financial information. They can also be based on statistical information as well. So we have here, I have one called build, accounts build, ours build here. And basically what's happening is that rather than having a debit and credit, what we're having is a decrease and increase. So if I drill through to the journal there, we can see there's 8. And when we get to the actual transaction, it's talking about an increase. So I have put a journal on saying that we have billable hours here for this department, for this location, and we have an increase of 80 hours used. Now, why would you want that in the system? Well, things like, we have the total revenue, we have the total hours, so we could work out, what is the revenue per hour. When we're looking at things like our non-for-profit organizations, they could be doing things like meals served or people helped or buildings maintained, things like that in the statistical journals. Now, also, when we're looking at these performance cards here, we can see down below that in our dashboard, we have not just performance cards, but we have reports as well. The eagle-eyed among you might see when I'm running a report later on that there's a button at the top that says add this to my dashboard. So it's very easy to drag and things about and customize your dashboards as you go along, depending on what you want on there for your role. In this case, I have a profit and loss. I have both reports, which are color-coded, coming up to my budget. Then I have a color code here of orange. If it was over, it might be red. It's up to you to decide that. We can help with that, obviously. We have our cash balance trends here. We have even close-through summaries and checklists. So the system can actually help you in your month-end process or other processes by tick off checklist boxes, etc. And that information is for a financial controller. Now, if I was to jump, for instance, to a non-for-profit organization, then what I might have is different dashboards. So I could have things like fundraising efficiencies dashboards. So again, we've got quite a lot of performance cards here, but we've also got things like giving by restrictions. We have our contributions by campaigns, our average donor givings, etc., revenue by source. And again, I can click into those to give me the information that I want to see right down into the detail of that. Okay, so that's giving you a quick overview of the dashboards. What I want to do is show you quickly a slide on the system. So if I showed you then my slide here, just to explain a wee bit about how dimensions are used within the system. So we have our general ledger right at the core of all that we are doing in the system. And around that general ledger, we have these things called dimensions. So a customer is a dimension, a supplier or a vendor is a dimension. But we also have things like locations or entities, entities being companies, locations being locations within those companies if we need them. They could be the same thing. We have departments, we have classes, contracts, projects, items if we're using the project system, and we also have user definable items as well, but they all link to the general ledger and can be used within the general ledger items themselves. So if I was to go into the next slide, we can see that, you know, if we use something like 1500 nominal code here, general ledger code, and we have cost centers, departments, projects, that could be up to 75 different lines of code in your nominal. Whereas Intacct allows us to have a very standard flat-based approach on our balance sheet and our P&L, and then we'll add our dimensions after that. Okay, so hopefully that explained a wee bit, because what we have then is we have an ability to really explode our data and to get to where we want to be when it comes to the like of our information. So very easily, without too much knowledge, I can go in here and say, well, this profit and loss is great, but what I might want to do is I might want to just edit that very quickly. And if I edit it quickly, if I have the rights to do so, I can come across here and I can say, well, actually, it would be nice if my actual column was expanded by, in this case, I'll expand it by departments. And we can just set that. And then save and done, refresh my sheet here, refresh my report, and I now have my revenue subscriptions by all of the different departments that I have within my company. So I think you'll see that that is a very powerful tool to be able to just change that on the fly if you've been given the rights to do so, and it will be able to, you'll be able to ask the what if questions and drill into the detail if you want. I can still go in here and drill down into the detail on this report, right down into the transactions, etc., if I wanted to do so. Okay. What we can do now is we're going to just have a wee look here. If you noticed at the top, I'm working at what's called the top level. Okay, we talked about entities or companies that we have on the list, and you can see that I have a number of different companies within my Intacct environment. Okay, now if we look at our entity structure here, just to give you a wee bit of an idea of how this is working. We have what's called a single entity module, and we have then our multi-entity shared environment. So the moment we have two different entities in our company, so our company in this case is a software company, and we have companies just within that. And what we can do is we can set the system and to share information on that. So what do I mean by share information? Well, share chart of accounts, so not general ledger structures, share dimensions, share customers, departments, even items. One of the questions I'm asked a lot for previous systems was, can it share items across environments and across companies, and also business processes. So when you're looking to set up or bring on a new company, the business processes that you're using in one entity will be the same or very similar in the other entity as well. We create one supplier if we want. We can also tie suppliers and customers just to one particular entity as well. But that gets the ability to be able to share information, and we can see that in a moment. Okay, so sharing data through that makes it easy. Now, how does that look for consolidations and things? Well, we can look and see an organizational view just to show you what is happening in my company here at the moment. And you can see it's a software company. There is different entities in different currencies, all merging through the consolidation view. And again, you can see we can have multiple strands here and three views. Ireland has two different regions and three shops in that region as well. We can run consolidations in the system. It's very easy to run the consolidations through that and just consolidate those out as well if you want rolled up information for different countries, different tax information, different currencies as well. But within the shared environment, if I just go back to my role-based dashboard here, my controller, you can see that I can jump down very simply just to the different entity levels. So location 1, it will open a new tab. It will go then to where we want to be in location 1. Again, if I looked at the dashboard there for the controller, you can see that the figures are different from the rolled up figures in the top level company. Okay, so we can see that different stat. I'm sure if you're like most other businesses that I talk to, consolidation, rolling up data can be very difficult. We can involve lots of different spreadsheets, trying to map them, trying to put them up. But the shared chart of accounts here makes that simple to do with Sage Intacct and can assist in accuracy and speed of month-end closes, etc. It can help us identify things. So for instance, I'm looking at my cash on hand, which looks good here. But if I drop down to my Canada company, well, it's maybe not as good. So it's just refreshing that page for me. And we can go down here, and there is a down on the Canada software company here, which we should see for an arrow there if we wanted to wait for that one. So we can look at things at a top level. We can drop down into the actual companies and we can see information at a glance. So that's great. Now, what happens when it comes to posting? Can it post transactions from one entity or one company to another? Yes, it can. So how it does that is there are predefined definitions that if you post from here to here, then there will be another journal done. There is a report, which is called an inter-entity transaction report. I've just listed up here, and it shows us all of the different transactions that were passed from one entity to another, whether it's one entity paying an invoice for another, or whether it's a journal just splitting up allocation costs across those multiple companies. So just going into this particular transaction, again, I can see a drill down option here from the report. And I'm looking to see here, there was a journal being held. It was source entry was a holding company, and the holding company then posted to all of these different locations, the debits and the credits using different currencies, using different values, etc. And what happens is when this posting was committed, then multi-entity entries were made automatically by the system. So this was all done in the background by the system. We didn't key both of these journals, we only keyed one, and the multi-entity transactions were done just below that as well. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a wee bit of understanding around the data structure and the company structure. Now let's take a look at the reporting structure, which is the other way we get some key information out of the system. So within the menu structure here, we have a number of different reports. We have a report center, which comes with quite a few predefined reports within them for each of the modules. So financial reports in here, there's up-to-date balance sheets, etc. And this is automatically installed when we create a new version of Intacct or a new implementation of Intacct. There are standard reports on the system. If we look at our financial reports here, we can see that we can go down to something like a profit and loss, for instance, here. So we'll look at profit and loss detailed, and we can see that there's an owner, there's a report type, and there's an audience. Now, I don't want to get too into this, but the report audience can be used, and we'll see that later on when we're looking at this particular option here for scheduling reports. But if I just run this report, I can run the report on the system. Up comes my detailed profit and loss, allowing me to see it on the screen, but also allowing me to jump straight into those options and even drill back down into the transactions that we have on the system, right down to the journal. Okay, when we're looking just at the very lowest level, we can see these dimensions that we talked about at the start are being used in here. So we're using classes, we're using customers, we're using items here to make up our transactions on the system. Just a nice wee thought here. Just down below, I can see a message from Emma, who I'm actually logged on as, and it says, why is this so high? This collaboration tool allows me to leave messages for other users in the same group as myself associated with transactions. So I could be putting a flag for the auditor here, and excuse my typing, a flag for the auditor, and I can share that with the rest of the group. It will stay with that transaction when we go, and in fact, when we scroll down through the system, it is on my collaboration center that I have all of the different transactions here. If I was to click back on this, it jumps me straight back into the transaction that the reference was made for. So again, very good to wrap around there. But coming back to the report here, we can take that report out in CSV, PDF, we can do in Excel if we wanted to. But another nice feature of Sage Intacct to help us would be the scheduling of reports. So if we picture at the month end, we have to send a board report out. So that is going to be a mixture of P&Ls, balance sheets, whatever else, reports that you cash flow analysis that you might have. And we can then set up that this particular report gets emailed out, and it gets emailed out maybe daily, weekly, but we can say following the close of the general ledger, which is probably a good one to do. And that gets emailed out to a particular user or a particular audience, say board members in this case, and we can say it's printable, it's HTML, it's in Excel format, etc. And once we save that and any other reports that we have, then that happens automatically from the background. So there's a lot of things within Sage Intacct can happen automatically, emails sent, for instance, if you're over the budget, things like that. So that can all be done in the background just to keep you up and running and processing it right. So there are some of your financial reports. There's my cash flow statement. So again, looking at my cash flow statement built into the system, we can go into that and see our different cash flows. And again, that can be printed or sent to Excel or emailed out of the system. Now, that was our financial reports. We also then can take reports a bit further, and we can try and replace some of these Excel reports that we have on the system. So let me look at the visual, interactive visual explorer here. And if I was just to go again, there's a library of reports that we can do. And if you're using projects, for instance, there's one here we can use for running interactive projects. And what this is doing is now it's calculating all the information and going to produce graphs, going to produce charts and things like that for us. So along the top is our criteria, along the bottom is our storyboard. So what we can see here is we have our criteria up the top. I can say, for instance, let's just show me a particular location. Immediately, all of the information changes and I can deselect and go out. If I wanted to pick certain sections, it highlights you can see there's charts and graphs that are connected. I can go into different storyboards showing me information that I have, approved hours for my expenses, etc. So this visual interactive explorer takes the data and allows me to do more with that particular data set. So we'll just leave that for now. So I think you can see that there's quite a lot of reports that we can use in the system. We can drill down, we can get information the way we want it quickly and drill into that information. Now, let's take a wee quick look at how we can look at automating key financial processes within the system. So one of those things within Sage Intacct is the ability, and we'll just go to accounts payable, is to have an approval process running through the system. So we can do things like approve suppliers. So if you notice there, if I went to, and I'll show you a supplier because we're looking at financials in here. So if I just clicked on suppliers, we've got a supplier list. If I wanted to find a particular supplier, I can just put that at the top and hit return. Sorry, there's my typing again. So Envisage. We can see that now if I was in the right company, it's not found anything there, but if I just hit return, I can then select the company name. So there's Lenovo and go into that one. All right, we've got additional information, contact information. We've got bank file information, so we can enable all of that. But when I create a supplier, so Envisage wasn't there, I could have gone and created it. And what I would do then is I would come back and someone then would approve that supplier that has been entered into the system. The Sage Intacct will actually allow me to see where that happens. So I've got an email here to say that under the demo system, there was a supplier home style kitchens was created. So we've got the authorization, the approval of that, and we have the email system to finish the whole loop. And that can be done when you're creating new suppliers. Just keeps the data nice and concise for you. We've also got AP invoices. So we can approve invoices. We can approve nominal journals. We can even approve purchase orders or requisitions through the system. And they can be approved by value, by department, etc., etc. Now, let's just look at an AP invoice for now, because one of the things that we're looking at when we're talking about automating key financial information is how do we get some of this information on? Now, with Sage Intacct, there's lots of different ways we can do that. So we can import it from a spreadsheet. We can add it manually on the system. We're keying it in here. We can bring it in from other systems. So there's a great API link that links to other systems, so transactions can be brought from other places. But we can also upload our information from invoices, in this case from the purchase ledger. So someone sent us an invoice. Well, what I can do is I can take that invoice and drag it from my email, drop it on the system, and then I can say, well, do we just want a single total, or do we want to split every line of the invoice up? And then we can create the AP invoice. Now, this brings in our machine learning. It brings in our optical character recognition, OCR recognition, and we create that. And then after it's created, it will be saved into the list as a draft, and it will allow us to go in and edit that. So we can see it's a draft information. It will also then put all the lines in here. So you can see there, I've said this is a multi-line one. So there's a new coffee machine for the office, a new coffee filter, and that's brought down into the memo. And you can see we still have our communications down at the bottom. Now, up at the top, we can see the history of that. So what's happened to it. We can also see that this transaction is draft, but the transaction number has already been put in for the system. So there is, again, a lot of identifications, a lot of warning messages for you if things are going wrong. So it's about keeping your data nice and clean and keeping your data usable and accurate on the system. So that's a duplicate one because I've used the same invoice. And what I did with the same invoice is I actually went into location one and I emailed myself that invoice. So there was an email address. So you not only can drag and drop, but you can actually get your suppliers to email invoices to an email address, and they will automatically be translated into the system. So that's the source was from email. It's a draft one. If I was to view that, it's the same sort of, it's actually the same report, and that's why it's the same invoice, and that's why it was a duplicate invoice there. Okay, so once that transaction is looked at, is posted and drafted, then it could go to the approval. So this is just your, this is just a workflow on the system. So we've entered an AP invoice. We now need to approve the AP invoices. So we can view it, approve it, or decline it. So if I just go into view here, you can see the invoices in there. I can, if I have the rights to, I can edit it, make changes to it. It's the wrong department maybe. And then finally, I can approve that. The approval notice will go, well, first of all, I will have got an email to say that it has been approved. So the transaction I put on has been approved. So that's great. So you're not having to go back and constantly look at things. Intacct is emailing you to update you on the situation. Not only invoices, but we can approve payments as well. So that's all through the system. How OCR recognition helps you with that. What happens whenever we do that transaction? If we change things within the screen, then it learns from that and it becomes smarter with the OCR recognition as we process our invoices over time. Okay, so other time saving and is in the cash management. And we're going to look at bank reconciliation here at the moment. So if I just choose a bank to reconcile, you can see I have this thing called a bank feeds. So what we've done is we've linked our bank account to our Intacct bank account, so our physical bank account, our online bank account to our Intacct bank account. And what we're doing here is we're dragging the information from our online account into Intacct, and then we are going to try and match certain figures for our bank reconciliation to take that tedious aspect of it out and time-consuming aspect of it out. Now, what we've done is we've set up these things called rule sets. And in Intacct, the rule set for this particular bank account means that I can check and see if the amount, if the document number, and if the date are right, then let's match it. We also can go a step further. We can do many to one and one to many. So many to one is if you've got lots of Intacct transactions with the same reference and you've done a lodgement in your bank and there's only one transaction in your bank, well, there is an ability to be able to marry those up as well, and the one to many. But this one here, it says bank fees, that's slightly different. So it's a create rule. So what I'm doing in here is I'm going to go in and say, well, if the transaction type is a debit and the description says bank fees, then I am going to create a transaction from a template that I've set up to the bank charges under the department of 300 and location 100, because that's the company we're working under. Okay, so that's great. We've got all that information done. We've got it all set up. Now what we want to do is just continue on to our bank feeds and onto our bank reconciliation. So I now have then the Intacct and the bank file. The bank file, there's nothing there because what it's managed to do, it's managed to match all of the transactions. So these are all transactions that have been matched, and they've been matched to Intacct transactions on the other side. And now it's a case of us going and processing the unmatched ones to try and work out, what is on our bank reconciliation, and then complete that bank reconciliation. But I'm sure you can see that there's been a lot of, that will save a lot of time when you are going through your bank reconciliation. Now, let's look and see at our general ledger and a wee bit of how it's set up and how we can use it. So as well as having advanced features in the general ledger and other areas of the system, we can also have a quick start general ledger. So we can bring actually in a general ledger and create it from out of the box. And then we can tweak that if we want, or we can have a completely own company-based your nominal or GL system in there. In fact, we can actually have these things called reporting accounts. So if we have reporting accounts, I can set up a different way of looking at the GL for investors. And all we're doing there is we are mapping nominal codes or GL codes to reporting accounts. So in other words, we can have different reports and report the GL information in different ways depending on our audience. Intacct for general ledger can do, well, standard usually is accrual accounting, but there is the cash accounting as well, and it in fact can do both at the same time, accrual and cash accounting in there. If we look at our general ledger accounts then, so again, just like our suppliers, we can go in and we can go on the top there and look at, some of the information just by clicking on hitting return, just to find what we need. If we wanted, we can find our, subscriptions. We can use wildcards as well. Okay, and we can find the different transactions. Now you'll notice in the GL code here that I have 5 digits for most of these GL codes, but there's some of them that actually have a subset here. So in this case, I have my 20701-010203, and they're subsets really of this general ledger code. So we're able to do that as well as dimensions, as well as all the other things that we've seen so far. Okay, so if I just edit one of these codes, just to go in and show you that, again, we've got titles, etc. But what I want to draw your attention to is this required dimensions. As you will all know, that the information you put into the system, if it's not consistent, then there's problems when we come to report it and group it together, etc. So in this particular general ledger code for my subscriptions, what I'm saying is that I require you to key a location in, and I require you to key a task in. Maybe it should have been an item, because this is a sales code. This is our subscriptions coming from our stock. Okay, so I can say that that nominal code is required to have these dimensions against them. That way, any transaction, whether it's coming through purchase invoicing, sale, in this case sales probably, because it's subscriptions, then they will have the dimensions that we need on the systems in there. So we can see that on it. When we come to user general ledger, one of the ways that Sage Intacct uses journal entries is it creates, and we can create as we want, journals in specific groups. So we can have different types of journals. So there's accounts payable journal at the top here. If I scroll down, there's a payroll journal. So let's look at the payroll journal here just by viewing the transaction. So it's easy to go in and look at the types of journal and view the transactions within that particular type. There's only 4 in this payroll journal, so that's manageable for us to see now. You'll notice that journals are either posted or draft, depending on how we look at it and how we post it. I can go in and just edit this one in draft at the moment. And I want to just show you a couple of things in here. First of all, we've got our dimensions. This is whether we're creating or giving a bonus to the sales department. Okay. And if we do that, one of the things that we have in here is we have linked this to our budgets and a thing called Spend Insight. So I'm putting a journal on. I click on my Show Spend Insight, and I can see that actually our budget is 12,000 for this, but we are putting on 13, so our funds available are -1 for that. So Sage Intacct allows you to use spend management to see your budgets while you're keying on transactions, whether that could be journal entries or whether it's purchase orders. If you want to see that, have we enough money in our budget to order these particular things? And that can be done at the time and not later on once we're running reports at the end of the month. This show spend management is looking at it at the time of entry of the transaction in here. So we've got our general ledger, we've got our payroll journals here, we have got our journal entries. Again, we've got things like adjusting journals, etc. Now, just to show you very briefly here, spend management alert. So I have tried to put a particular transaction on, and the system has emailed me to tell me that there's a transaction on here. I can view the transaction, which then opens up in Intacct, brings me to the transaction itself, and I can see there is a transaction with Spend Insight that we now cannot, we don't have the available funds for. All right, so the interactive aspect of the system is informing you via email that you're over your budget in this case, and it's allowing somebody to deal with that without you having to go searching and looking for that. Okay, taking a quick look at budgets here then. So within the system, a menu, I can go to my budgets here, and you can see once I go into my budgets and my budget repository, you'll notice that I have lots of budgets in the system for different reasons. So the budget that we looked at right back at the start, where we talked about our controller looking at our P&L, was the master budget. Okay, but I may want to set up a forecast budget. So I'm going to take the master budget, and set up a forecast budget to then tweak some of the figures to see what that would look like if we brought on another department, if we upped our sales prices for our products, etc. Now, it's very easy to get your budgets in. We can import budgets from a spreadsheet. If we're wanting to take our master budget, we can export it out and then change it and import it in as a different budget. But what I wanted to show you here is that unlike some other systems, that the budget, if I go into the budget details, is based around not just the GL code, but it's also based around the dimensions as well. So if I looked at this particular budget, this budget is based on the GL code, okay? But it's also based on a department and based on a location. So if you think of the benefits that will give you by being able to not just look at one GL code, but also to look at any of the other dimensions that you would have on the system and be able to forecast and budget against those. Very simply, if I was to just change my forecast budget here, if I was to go back up to my role-based dashboard, go into my report and just edit that, well, I'm just simply going to my columns again and changing my budget here from the master budget to the forecast budget, or adding another column to have both in here. And the refreshing will do that. Okay, so thanks for listening to me so far. Just the one last thing that I want to look at is some of the advanced features within the Sage Intacct, where it makes use of things like machine learning. Okay, so AI is a very commonly talked about thing now. Everybody's bringing it in, but Sage Intacct has this built into the system. Now, where does it do that? Well, we've seen the OCR. It's looking at how you're posting the OCR invoices, but it's also, there's a thing called GL Outlier. So when I look at GL Outlier, what it does is it makes use of machine learning to analyze your transaction history and of the companies that you're working with, to examine if the entry should be highlighted or stopped in your scenario. If we look at these ones, these two are declined on the system. Now, the reason why they're declined is not because a user has not approved them, it's because the system has not approved them. And what we can do is it will give us a detailed list by email of what's been declined. We can go in then and we can edit those transactions again. And up at the top, you can see it says there is unusual historical matches found. And if I go down, I'm not usually posting this type of journal to this location for this service line, for this account. So it's flagged that up for me. Now I can just resubmit and say, that's okay. We allow that to happen. That is a new routine. But if someone has accidentally posted it in a further date, or if someone's posted it against the wrong department, against the wrong GL code, etc., then the system will try and pick that up for you. So your data stays consistent, stays accurate, and the system is looking at that for you. Okay, a few other standout features within the Sage Intacct to help you as a business, looking at the key insights as well, is we have things on our system like platform services that we can do. So a lot of systems, you'll need to get expensive development work done to add extra fields to set up different routines on the system. And Sage Intacct tries to keep those on board and inside your availability. So for instance, I went into custom fields for this particular demo. I had an industry type that I wanted to add to my customers. So I edited that industry type, told it what it was for customers. It was a pick list. Here are the values that I want to have on that. I want to have it called industry type, etc. I want it added to the additional information of my customers field. And now when I go into my accounts receivable, look at my customers lists, just go in and edit a customer here. Then in my additional information, I have now a field for industry type using the pickable options that I set in my system. So if you think of your accounting systems are now getting a lot busier. They're allowing more information to be taken out about different types of customers, different areas. Well, some of that is in the system, but where it's not, you can create your own custom fields and use those in your reports and in your imports, etc. Everything else. Staying with that, we have things called smart rules and smart events and smart links. So a smart link would be if I was to view this customer. Again, down at the bottom here, I've got a smart link to send me to Google Maps to show me where that is. Very simple, but worthwhile to go to that. I had a customer who was doing VIN number checks for cars. They wanted to go to a particular website there. If it's a product, it might be to go to the product file on list so that you can send that out. If it was a stock item, etc., their picture, their details, although some of that's held on the stock record anyway. The other thing that we have is a thing called smart events. And a smart event allows you, just give me 1 second, just to go to smart events here in my bookmark. So when I got that supplier email, that is a smart event that I set up. So if I look at that and just edit that, that's allowing us to go to the supplier. So anytime a new supplier is created, I get an email. There's things like shipper invoices, there's callbacks. So that can be done throughout the whole system. So things like budgets, if you wanted to do that, if somebody's posting to this, if it's gone over a certain level. So we've got these smart events, and they're all done through the platform services as well. So I hope that I have given you some things to think about on the system. So I will, I'll pass it back now for some questions. I see a question just coming in there. So I'm using Sage 200. Can I easily upgrade my data to Sage Intacct? Well, there isn't an on-premise to the cloud Intacct Sage 200 upgrade path that way, but Sage Intacct comes with a lot of import and export routines. So what we would tend to do with that is we would be able to export your Sage 200 data out of the system. Sage Intacct gives us the ability to import data and import data on virtually all different aspects of it. So you can import, as we talked about, PL transactions, but you can also import your chart of accounts, your opening balance journals. So what we tend to do is look maybe at your opening balance journals and import them for the previous year, and then whatever month you're up to in that year, or whatever you choose to go by. That way you've got comparison balances for this year, last year, and then opening balances for your accounts payable and accounts receivable, as well as your bank recs and things like that. So yes, that can be done really easily. It's done through the import routines, which again, templates can be created. It's all very easy to do through the system, the Intacct system. Okay, so I'm just going to hand it back now to Ivan. Thank you very much for listening to me. All right, thank you.
And thank you, Paul. To be fair, I think that was a great overview of the system. And hopefully what you got from that was, when you're thinking, is Intacct for me? Why would I think of moving to Intacct? It's really about, it's for companies who are looking to automate their processes, to start using the technology in a smarter way. So the likes of the GL outliers. So having the system work in the background. So even if, we all make mistakes, but at least if you do make a mistake, the system can spot it and flag it for you. So you're given every opportunity really to make sure that the data in the system is as clean as possible. I suppose one other area where you can really improve processes, I was only reminded yesterday, we're working with a customer at the moment implementing Intacct, where one of the issues that they were saying they had was setting up management reports every week. She would spend her entire Tuesday for the weekly management meeting on Wednesday. So entire Tuesday was spent doing management reports. By using what Kyle showed there, the scheduling and automating of the reporting process for the management pack, she actually ended up, we were able to give her back 20% of her time straight away with that one feature alone. And being able to get back time is really what's key here. It's invaluable to a business that you can actually free up people to do more critical work. And then obviously the management team have that accurate information up to date so that they can start making more business critical decisions based on as well. So yeah, look, if you're looking to make changes in the business, streamline processes, improve the process to ultimately improve productivity and profitability as an extension of that, that's why I'd be looking at Intacct. One other question just come through. I just wanted to check before we wrap up. Is there a management information system allowing contracts, emails, and correspondence and all updates attached to customers? If I can fire that back to Mr. Moore.
Yeah, absolutely. So every transaction that is put on the system can have an attachment associated with that. Customer records can have attachments associated with that as well. Now the like of contracts there. So yes, you can hold information against your customers and your contracts, and that's just a drag and drop into an attachments or a contacts folder there. If you are talking about contracts, there are contract management processes. There is a contracts module in there, like a projects module in there as well. But if it's just attaching documents, yes, there is stuff that you can do like that on the system.
One other question, funnily enough, that some people might have was there not supposed to be three of us on here today? Unfortunately, we were supposed to be joined by our colleague Chris Howley, but unfortunately he was under the weather, so myself and Kyle had to fly the flag in that respect. But hopefully we covered everything off. I don't see there's any more questions coming through. If there isn't any other questions, we'll take this opportunity then to wrap up and just thank you for attending. If you have any questions on it, you can obviously contact us by the information on screen. We will be able to circulate this video as well. So any other questions or anything you want to follow up, please feel free to contact us at the details on screen. And failing that, it's just left for us to say thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you at the next webinar.